I sat down with three of my favorite female Vedic astrologers to talk about Vedic astrology and feminine energy, also talking about the transits here in 2020. This is something that you're going to really enjoy hearing about. Hey folks, it's Sam, and as you can see, I'm surrounded by these lovely ladies today. I'm living large. We're going to be talking about Vedic astrology and women, female horoscopic astrological indicators, and how women can get by in this world using Vedic astrology, empowerment. Also through the rest of this year, we're going to hit on some very specific subjects that are going to affect women, of course affect us all. But we have three great astrologers here: Alexis Cox, Malini and Alexandra Rose. You've seen them here before and gotten very used to their excellent analysis and work. And I just want to share real quick why I decided to bring this together. I've seen more and more Malini, Alexis, and Alix really talking a lot about these themes of female empowerment and what it is to be living as a woman in this world where we have patriarchal structures and where the feminine is not really as revered or honored or understood even as the masculine. We live in a very masculinized world, even, technology and business and data and all the kind of stuff. And so seeing so much of that lately, I wanted to bring these three lovely ladies and astrologers together to talk about that energy from their perspective, and also highlight that throughout the rest of the year with some important transits. So welcome everybody, and everyone go around and introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll jump right into it. We'll go Malini, Alix, and Alexis.
Hi everybody, my name is Malini. You'll have seen me on Sam's channel. I'm so grateful for him to really give us this platform. Thank you, Sam. You're a champion for women like us. Today I'm actually going to be talking about the feminine energy and what it means to be embodied in a female body as a feminine essence. And we'll take it from there. I have my other two friends who are going to expand on that a little bit more.
Great. Who was next?
I am. My name is Alix, and you have also seen me on Sam's channel before. And my astrology work is under Alexandra Rose, Vedic Astrology. And I'm also very happy to be here talking about this. I think the empowerment of the feminine, and not just in women, but in all of us, is so important at this time to really bring balance back to our world, within ourselves first, and using the astrology to really mirror that within ourselves. So I'm very happy to be here talking about this with all of you. And I'll be talking about the nodes moving into the feminine signs of Taurus and Scorpio. And then we'll all be sharing about that together. So thank you.
Aloha, namaste, this is Alexis. I am a colleague of these two lovely ladies, blessed to be in their presence. I love talking about issues around the feminine, the divine feminine, empowering women and mothers is a big part of what I've turned my practice into since I myself became a mother. I have been working with Sam for 7 years now. I need so much personal empowerment into my daily practice and life. So I feel like whatever we can share here and whatever we can offer is really a blessing for us as well. So thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. Great. So we're going to start. Malini, you have a screen you want to go off, or you start us off?
So I have an outline here which we are going to follow. We're going to talk about the feminine energy and what it means to be a feminine embodied individual. From there, Alexis is going to talk about Venus and Moon. They're both feminine planets and express feminine energy differently, and their transits to 2020. Alix Alexandra Rose will talk about Rahu in Taurus and Ketu in Scorpio, that transit. And then we'll touch upon Mars in Aries, Pisces, and Saturn, Jupiter in Capricorn, both are feminine signs. So a lot of feminine themes going on.
Good.
And because we have so much feminine energy that we all are feeling, it's first really important to understand the feminine energy, right? So I have my chart up here, but let's really understand the feminine energy. And for that, we have to really understand the principles of Shiva and Shakti. And that's where this whole masculine, feminine concept comes into being. Shiva is the observer, the observer or the consciousness. And Shakti is the feminine. She's the creation. She's the object that is being observed. And so the job of Shiva or the masculine energy is to really observe or witness the feminine essence, and the job of the feminine is to be in creation, is to be in movement, is to be constantly changing and expanding. And we should not confuse masculine and feminine with gender identities, which are male and female, right? And it's very understandable because gender identities are so deep. That's one of our deepest identity. As soon as we are born, that first thing we identify is whether we are in a male or a female body. But masculine and feminine energies are present in all individuals. It's present in me, and I'll go through my chart, and you can see, we'll be able to see how prominent the masculine energy is within me. And we have to think about masculine in terms of action, the penetration that happens, right? That action is masculine, and then the feminine is the feeling or the emotion. It's the motion. Emotions are like energy in motion, right? It's the emotion behind that action. And these concepts really apply to heterosexuals, but also to non-binary or homosexuals. And sometimes it's very easy. I feel like it's a kind of a blessing to be in a non-binary body, because then it really helps you tap into that masculine and feminine energy within you, because the gender identity is kind of shifted. I have brought up 9 emotions because we're talking about the feminine energy. It's going to be Navratri in a few days, which is the 9 days of the goddess. And there are Navrasas, 9 emotions that are actually defined by Natya Shastra. Natya Shastra is the book from which all classical Indian dance and music has originated from. It was written, right after the Vedic times, and really defines movement in great detail. It's very scholarly. So in Natya Shastra, there are 9 emotions, and I've loosely translated them in English. English doesn't have literal translations all the time. So there are lighter emotions which are pretty allowed in the world. If you go to see joy, which is hasya, lust. Lust is kind of, Shringara Rasa is kind of difficult to express in this day and age, but yes, lust is a lighter emotion. Courage, which is Veera. Awe or surprise, which is Adbhuta. Bliss, tranquil, which is Shanta. It's not just peace, it's that blissed out, tranquil state. And then, Karuna, which is also compassion, sorrow. There is fear, anger, disgust. And in this day and age, a lot of people are talking about shame, which was not defined in the original text. And I have them in different colors. So the ones in pink are lighter emotions, which are more culturally accepted and accepted in terms of expression of it. We feel all of them, but how easy or how accepted in the world it is to express these emotions is a different topic. Whereas the ones in red are tougher to express, whether you're a female or a male, especially the feminine embodied women. Anger is tougher to express. Disgust is tougher to express. Shame, fear, these are harder emotions to express. And that's why I've like also brought up my chart, and we have Alex and Alexis, their charts up to really, because all three of us are female bodies, but the masculine and feminine energies feel very different in our bodies. And I've actually put the planets like for pure, Saturn is the planet that triggers that anger. Mars is the planet that triggers that. And then for this dust, it is Ketu, mostly Ketu, but also Saturn. Shame is Rahu, a very Rahu kind of a quality. So how the feminine essence moves through these emotions, right? And men and women both feel them. It's how you move through them and how you express them. So this is my chart, ladies. And right off the bat, if you look at my chart, the first thing that pops up is the prominence of the masculine energy, right? I'm a Libra rising, which is a masculine sign. It is ruled by Venus, but it's the masculine essence of Venus. And almost all my planets, except two, are in masculine signs. Even my female planet, which is Venus, is in a masculine sign, joint Rahu, very masculine. I have Sun, Mars, Mercury, again, very masculine. So there's a prominence of masculine energy. And I'm in a female body, right? And my feminine planets are the only feminine planet in a feminine sign is Moon, that too in the 12th house. So the expression of that feminine energy is harder. And I do come across, I've gotten this feedback a lot, and I know it for a fact, I come across as a very cerebral, very intellectual person. A lot of people talk about how intimidating I am. And I kind of joke about it that, especially when I'm at work, I'm the strongest man in the room. It's all these masculine energies that are very prominent. And when it comes to being in a relationship too, I intimidate very easily without doing anything. I intimidate a lot of men. And, I have that resting bitch face is what people say. It's
Resting bitch face? That's what
I don't think of you like that, but okay.
So, and it has to do with like harsh planets in my first house. I have Saturn and I have Ketu in my first house. And so there is that tendency to be a very, serious kind of individual. If I get into that Venus Rahu, which is playful, is fine. And for some people, I do come across as like outgoing and humorous, but internally, I do feel very introverted and extremely serious, which is not what is socially accepted by the society, right? Like the society expects women to be bubbly and to be cute and to be sensual, and but like being that serious, cerebral, intellectual person is not celebrated that much. So my masculine side, and I'm a Venus ruled. I'm a Venus ruled individual, and my masculine side is celebrated. I'm celebrated for being very intellectual, and and people acknowledge that more. But then I have issues with my body image, and I have like two harsh planets in my first house, and my first lord. The harsh planets are Saturn and Ketu, and my first lord is joint Rahu, which is also, people call it malefic. And so there's a lot of body image issues that I've faced throughout my life. One is body weight, but the first house also has to do with face. And I draw a lot of criticism for acne on my face, my skin color, the shape of my nose, eyebrows, all these things. I draw a lot of criticism to it. And I'm also very sensitive to it because I have Saturn in my first house. I'm very aware. I'm very self-critical about my own appearance. And imagine being ruled by Venus. That feels really hard. To be criticized for your beauty feels very hard. And I appreciate my masculine side too because I exercise it all day long, to be out there in the world, climb the corporate ladder, do all of that. That's a very masculine quality. And I am very comfortable with that. But when it comes to that feminine qualities of just relaxing, slowing down, being receptive, receiving the gaze, right? The feminine is not chasing, it's just receiving the gaze of the masculine. The Shakti receives the gaze of Shiva. That requires a lot of practice and a lot of work. Moon in the 12th helps, but also it's like one of my blind spots, so I really have to get into it. Um, and I put it here, I'm very masculine in the world, and I'm actually celebrated for it. Uh, First job out of college, out of finishing my PhD, I was offered the role of the CEO, right? It's very that being very masculine and the strongest man in the room is celebrated. And then I'm learning to tap into the feminine receiving role in my personal intimate relationships with men especially, because that's where I can share true joy. So I also I've put in my relationship with anger because Mars rules my 7,000. I've been shamed for expressing anger, and I do get angry. But growing up in an Indian society, you're shamed for being expressing anger. You're shamed for being expressing disgust. I feel disgust a lot, but I don't express it on the outside, or I have to figure out a way to express it. It's not. And then feeling shame, that Rahu. I feel the shame but cannot express it. Um, and that's a challenge. That's a challenge of being feeling it, and then how do I move through it without really like punishing someone else. So I actually put down some practices I do, and I'm ruled by Venus, which is the masculine side of Venus. We have Alix here, who has Venus in her first house, and a very feminine sign. We'll talk about it in a bit. And Alexis here, who's also ruled by Venus. She's a Taurus rising, and they're feminine, more feminine energies than my Venus, which is very masculine. So there are certain things that I, over the years, have learned, especially in terms of relating to men and getting into intimate relationships, that I really practice, because I want to be very spontaneous. I want to be the leader. I don't want to be the leader, but I'm a natural leader. I can just take charge and be in charge, and can come across as very emasculating to men. Even my brother has told me at times that I come across as very emasculating to him. So I've over the years figured out ways, and it's a work in progress all the time. You have to practice it every single day, of how to get into that feminine body, because I have such strong masculine presence, right? And I'm not a man; I'm in a female body. So I consciously try to be present in my body, which means engaging in the five senses in a healthy way, which is like bringing back attention to my body, right? The five senses are taste. So when I go out on dates, instead of worrying about is he looking at me, is he interested, is he looking at other people, I'm really trying to be present in my body, give that masculine energy which I have within me back to myself. So on dates, I learned to be present to my five senses, which is taste. So I'll be paying attention to how the coffee tastes, or how the food tastes, or the smell, tapping into the smell of the food or perfumes around, or touch, like my own touch against my wrist, not in a sexual way, but just like bring attention back to my body, or how the fabric of my dress feels against my calves. Any sight, colors, scenery, sound, and then sound, like natural sounds around me. This is like really when I tap into my body, I'm like forcing myself to be in a feminine receptive role. The other thing that I've really tried very hard, and Saturn and Ketu in the first house doesn't help, is putting my sword down. So learning not to be I'm extremely critical towards myself, and I use The Queen's Code by Alison Armstrong. It's a book. I've used it as a textbook. I've underlined, highlighted it, really grinded all the principles and digested it, because and I made a vow. The book makes you take a vow. Put your sword down, which is uh, do not cut open the other person, which is the masculine. Do not be the man who shows up on the date, or the men in my life, or even the women. Do not criticize them. Do not break them down. And that's a very conscious practice, especially when if you think about work, right? And we are all at work, and somebody gets favored over me. If it's a woman, I have to tell myself, I have to stop myself from thinking that, oh, she's sleeping with the boss, that's why she's getting that job. Not going there is a conscious effort. And everybody does it, everybody gossips. And it's very natural to go there. So how not to criticize the other person? That's the first step. Men, women equally. Even men, if I'm in a role that I'm competing with them, how not to uh, tear them down and just help build them up. And that's a personal vow I have made, that I'm not going to tear people down. I'm only going to build them up. If I have a feedback to give, how do I say it in a way that is constructive and doesn't really tear them down? Words are very powerful, and I know, because I receive a lot of criticism. I work in a field that is based on criticism, and it hurts. Criticism hurts, and it can really bring people down. And how to consciously build people up, that's been a practice. The other thing that I really do is allowing emotions, and I have written it as E-motions, emotions. And over the years, I don't generally talk about it, but I guess this is the first time I'm talking about it, is practicing feminine movement, feminine sensual movement. And that requires, it came as a part of doing pole dancing and learning about lap dance, and I've done that for 5 years. But it was all to understand, the sensual and sexual energy within me, especially growing up in India, growing up with a lot of shame, a lot of body shame. How to move that energy, because I didn't even know how to relate to men, right? So how to move that energy, and then becoming really present to where emotions get stuck in my body. So I know I hold a lot of emotions in my knees and my calves, especially anger. And if I have a lot of disgust, again, it's in my calves. For me, that is I've worked a lot to figure out where it is. And then exercising those areas of my body, whether it is through yoga or is it through dance, it's just physically exercising those muscles to release that energy and move it out of my body, is very important. And if you think about meditation, which is where we sit in one place and we close our eyes, the meditation is a practice. It's a very masculine practice. It's a practice of pratyahar, which is you're withdrawing all the senses from the world and you're going within. You're becoming the observer. You're becoming that masculine energy to your own inner self, which is the feminine, that creation. But if you're in a feminine essence or feminine body in the world, for me, what has worked is engaging in movement. And for me, it's very easy to be cerebral, to be very intellectual. It's so easy. I get into that. I can overanalyze stuff and be there. But to get me grounded in my body, I really need movement. And I've learned that. And I have a lot of friends and clients who are mothers and new mothers. And Alexis will talk about it much more. I've also especially when you're a new mother, all those darker energies or tougher energies get heightened, of fear. Am I a good mother? Am I going to really kill my baby, right? My baby's not latching onto my breast and it's not breastfeeding. All of those emotions, that anger, the shame, their body changes so quickly. And then how do you connect to that? The first house, which is the body, and the fourth house, the heart. How do you really stay present and connect to it and not just, repress it, or, I'm going to look at it later kind of a thing. How do you stay present to it and then move through that instead of it becoming a ticking clock or an atom bomb within you, right? Which is ready to explode anytime. So that's been a practice. And then I really, really dig Alison Armstrong. I read the Queen's Court almost every day. and also the book The Way of a Superior Man by David Data. That has really, really, really helped me understand, my own masculine and then my own feminine, and how to connect that and integrate that within myself, and not really like yearn for attention from other people. Because, and I talked about disgust. I feel disgust very deeply. I have Ketu in my first house. I feel disgust very deeply. And I used to not express it, but in intimate relationships, if I authentically express disgust, I've learned that that's very attractive to the man, because then he knows what to do with it. But if I'm not expressing it and authentically, it's not manipulating the other person, it's like really authentically being in that emotion, it really helps the man, because the man is penetrating and it's a one focus, one gaze thing. He can figure it out how to move through it. So that's been a practice. And then really astrology has helped a lot to drill down these concepts within me, because again, I'm very cerebral and intellectual. I need to first understand it in my head and then it gets into my body. So understanding the principles of astrology very thoroughly, especially integrating that 7th house and 7th lord lessons, right? And for me, that 7th house is Aries. It is very spontaneous, wants to take action in the moment, very quick, ruled by Mars again, very quick. And I'm a female, so how do I integrate that energy within me? That's been pretty big. That's one of my learning lessons, and has been throughout this life, I guess.
Well,
Yeah.
that's amazing sharing. Thank you so much for being so honest about that. That's not easy to do, and that was a great astrology lesson, as well as I love the thing about all the emotions broken out like that. Alex and Alexis, have any comments before we get on to your charts?
Go ahead.
Alex,
Alexis.
I don't
can't
know.
hear you.
I don't know that I have.
I said go ahead to Alexis.
I don't know that I have anything I want to comment on Malini's chart specifically. I might bring up some points she made.
Okay,
when I
great.
talk.
Great. So, where do we go now?
I have Alexandra Rose, her chart up here. Alex, do you want to go into how you express the feminine and the masculine energy? And you have like Venus and Mars in the first house, right? So it will be really interesting to know your perspective. So many feminine planets there, and how you navigate that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, you can hear me okay now, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, great. It's using the astrology has helped me so much in understanding the qualities that work through me, especially because, similar to Malini, I have 2 planets in my first house, and I feel like that's a lot of energy to work with, because it really has. There's the more planets that are in the first, there's like a pronounced energy to you, and you're really carrying that energy with you. And I feel like it's also even a responsibility. I mean, all of the astrology is a responsibility, but to carry those planets like in your presence and in your immediate environment, I think is something that's really important to know. And for me, with Venus and Mars, it's always an interesting process and journey, because they really are very oppositional energies. Mars is like this young, masculine, warrior, action-oriented planet, and debilitated in Cancer. And then Venus is like this feminine, receptive, sensual, young maiden energy. And so carrying both of them is always an art, a work in progress. And I think even just within the sign of Cancer, which is a very mothering, unconditionally loving, nurturing sign that generally doesn't have very good boundaries, has to kind of learn those boundaries. Something I've learned as a woman is really how to cultivate boundaries, and that if I don't have self-respect and I don't have clear boundaries, then usually my Mars will act out and become very like emotionally triggered and very passionate and it becomes it's like I'm very emotional. I have my moon in Pisces. I have this emotional energy that I work with, but harnessing my Mars energy, I think, has been one of the most profound and growth-oriented things for me, and to kind of learn how to discipline it in a feminine way and not need to act impulsively on an emotional experience, and really go more into that Venus, because Mars is also the yoga karaka for a Cancer person. So even though it's debilitated for me, it's incredibly strong. Plus with my Venus there, it's forming a powerful Raja Yoga. And so I feel that my work has been really learning how to embody my power and use my power wisely, and use my emotional intensity in a way that I don't immediately act on things. It's like I'll feel something and I'll act on it, or I'll get really emotionally triggered. And learning to discipline Mars and really cultivate that energy has been really powerful. And since I've been in my Venus Dasha these past 2 years, really going more into Venus energy and softening and noticing that when an emotion comes up, I can still move it through, but I don't have to believe it. I don't have to react on it. I can kind of go somewhere, let it move through, kind of what Malini was saying, even the dance or moving the energy and not mentally attaching to it, because then there becomes a reaction that ends up being sort of detrimental for me, especially as a Cancer. I really feel it, and it becomes sort of this heaviness. And I think that Venus in Cancer as well can be difficult, in the sense that Cancer is a very, like I said, mothering, nurturing sign, has that unconditional love quality to it. And Venus there, that's how I love. That's what I bring to relationships, and somehow end up being somebody's mother very easily, and almost kind of go into that in my intimate relationships, where it feels easier to mother someone, and it feels easier to not have a boundary and just keep unconditionally giving, then get hurt, then Mars reacts, and then it's kind of this spiral. And so I've really been navigating that energy, how to kind of discipline Mars, and work with that energy, and then sink into my Venus and allow myself to be more receptive, allow myself to be more not needing to act on everything, has been a really powerful lesson for me in integrating my own feminine nature, because I do have a lot of planets in feminine signs, but that Mars just seems to be so strong for me, and really had to work on it so that I can have a balance. And like I said, always aware of the energy that I carry with me, and kind of balancing Mars and Venus so that there's a good balance in what I'm carrying. So I think that's probably been the biggest lesson for me, is to learn how to fall into that Venus and be receptive, but also integrate that Capricorn energy, that 7th house energy of discipline and boundaries and protection of myself, so that I have some sort of it's like I feel like flowing water sometimes, and I really just need something to hold it. And that ends up being my own boundaries and my own self-respect and my own self-worth, that then allows Venus to act without just unconditionally giving and loving and then feeling hurt. It gives it a little bit more clear sight. And then Mars disciplining that to really act with integrity and to not just be emotionally reactive to everything, but to discipline it and really have more emotional integrity, I think has been a really powerful experience for me in coming into a more balanced nature with both my masculine and my feminine.
If I could say, it's a great analysis and overview. One thing I would say is that example that you use, which is so right on, about Cancer is a sign of selfless love, so you're much more comfortable there. But Venus is the planet of conditional love, where we could say, I give selflessly and then I get my feelings hurt. What this is that issue of, because relationships are not about selfless love, because actually in relationship you're actually not giving selflessly. That's not what they're for. Relationships are about the transaction. And this is why, and this is the illusion of Cancer that I talk about, or anytime you get Venus and the moon together, this illusion comes in, because we have the illusion that, oh, I'm giving selflessly and I'm mommying you and then getting my feelings hurt, but it's not selfless. Like the mother doesn't feel like they get their feelings hurt when they give to the child, because that's truly selfless. We don't feel like we're getting our feelings hurt when we give to our pets and our animals, because it's truly selfless. But romantic relationships are not selfless. Even though the instinct for Cancer or for the moon or for water signs is to not have boundaries and want to flow with everything, relationships, romantic relationships, and even all relationships with other adults are conditional, 100% conditional. That's why we have a friend, because we feel like it's even. And that's the difference between Venus and the moon and water and air and whatnot. And the reason you keep coming back to that Mars, as you said, it's more prominent, it's more important to the Cancer person, is because that's the one that allows the Cancer to have the courage to fight to the death to protect the child and whatnot. So the Cancer relies on that one more. It's the 5th Lord and the 10th Lord. So this is the nature, this is why the functional nature of the planets are so important.
Yeah.
Venus is still a benefic, but for Cancer it's a functional malefic. It's the 11th Lord, and the energy itself doesn't flow as easily. Like with Malini as Libra, Venus is a functional benefic, and the moon is more uncomfortable because its relationship with the ascendant and with the ascendant ruler is not. It's not one of the Dharma house planets.
Alex, so when I look at your chart, the thing that strikes out the most to me is you have this Venus Mars that we talked about in the first house, but it also gives you that magnetism, right? Especially that Venus Mars coming together, that sexual magnetism and attracting a lot of people. And then your ascendant Lord in the 9th house, so being this high priestess, where men naturally like when this chart comes to me, the first thing I'll say is like men naturally are attracted to you because they think of you as this goddess energy.
They want a mommy. Let's face it, we want a mommy.
So how do you navigate that? How do you because being in an intimate partnership requires that give and take, that Venus transaction. But again, if you're put up on a pedestal, then how do you navigate that?
That's a good question.
And I'm sure you do because of the kind of work you do, right?
Yeah. I think because of the work that I do and naturally being in a leadership position, I've had to practice a lot of boundaries. Even in honing in that energy, I think Rahu in the 8th too. It's like when I was younger, I definitely used that energy to my advantage to get what I thought I wanted, which was whatever attention or whatever we think as women will make us feel better. But I definitely also know that I've kind of matured in that energy, and I feel that I do it. I hold it in integrity, and I try not to let it be something that hooks people for any the wrong reason or anything like that. I think we have to always be careful of how we use our energy. So it's really been a practice for me of not what comes towards me, because I can't necessarily control that, but controlling the way that I hold it with maturity and not feeding off of that energy for any of the wrong reasons. It's definitely been my own practice of maturity with that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you. That was a great sharing.
You're welcome.
Alexis, this is your chart up here, and you are the other Venus ruled sign, which is Taurus. Very feminine as compared to the Libra ruled sign. Libra is very airy, very masculine, wants to be in the world and be social, kind of. So it would be great if you could share your experience, and you have like your ruling planet in a feminine sign, how that feminine energy feels to you, and how do you navigate that?
Sure. I'd love to. I think it's interesting because Malini has the Venus ruled sign and Alix has the feminine rising. I have both. And I really feel the aspect of receptivity is a big part of how I approach life. So I tend to wait for things to come to me as opposed to initiating them. That's one way I really experience being a feminine rising is I have a tendency to like let life happen to me as opposed to making it happen, which I really notice a distinct difference with Malini, especially in that. Like I'm a person who waits for other people to call. I wait for other people to invite me places. I wait for my internet to break down before I fix it. I wait for everything to kind of happen. I'm not an initiator. But interestingly, I have Mars giving drishti to my rising also. So I do have that that aspect. And it is in my 10th house, which helps me initiate with work. So when things are involving a job or work or something like that, I do have more of an initiatory quality. I go out and get a job, or I rise to the top of a job quickly. I have some kind of discipline there in that area of my life. So it's a dichotomy for me, actually, because who I think myself as, I think of myself as someone very feminine who enjoys life. I get caught up in what I'm doing. Like you spoke about that, Malini, as something that you sometimes struggle with, like the tasting the food, or getting yourself to experience the touch. I sort of live in that world. I live in a world where I'm always pausing because of food or the flavor of food, or maybe the plants need water right now, or this thing over here needs help. So I have that sort of plodding Taurus nature, which I've heard called lazy before, but I actually think it's more like doing things that feel good to me and that make me feel good and that keep me balanced. So if I feel hungry, I need to eat. I can't just keep waiting and waiting and waiting to eat, because then I'm gonna feel angry. I have that tendency to sort of take care of myself as I go, and then when I'm in work situations, I tend to push myself, and that's the world we live in, is a world where you're supposed to be productive. You're supposed to wait to eat your lunch if there's something important to do, and you're supposed to put off your needs and not go to the bathroom or any of those things. And that I feel a lot of stress when those situations come up. Like I feel immediately that my needs aren't being taken care of, and I can override them, but it's a source of stress for me. And it's also a source of stress for me when I have to initiate things. If I have to call somebody, or I have to tell them something, or I have to reach out in some way, that's a source of stress for me. So that's one very strong way I experience that feminine quality. I do have my moon in Libra, in the masculine form of Venus, and so mentally and emotionally, I experience myself always trying to, probably similar to you, Malini, in some ways, like organize why I feel the way I feel. It's always a quality of rationalizing it to myself, or mentally explaining to myself feeling, which can be considered very, very lacking compassion when you're talking to people, when you're trying to communicate with people with your moon. It's very much your inner self. So you're connecting on a very intimate level. And I'm going to talk more about Venus and the moon and the differences in a little bit, but that quality of that Sam just brought up, of Venus being about conditional, transactional love and connection, and the moon being this unconditionally nurturing quality. Well, I find that I'm not as unconditionally nurturing as I could be with the moon. I have a very transactional quality there, where I know how to be nice and polite and give and take, but I'm not just openly boundless there. I'm very much in my mental energy, and I tend to, someone will tell me a problem, and I have a tendency to explain to them how they can fix it or make it better. And that's something I've worked on a lot, like really listening to people and holding space for them, compassion. I am a mother, and so I have a very young son. I try to hug him before anything else. Whenever he has a problem, I try to hug him first. And then I do my rational, but this is why that happened. And I explain everything.
It's called mansplaining, right?
Mansplaining, exactly. But it's
when a woman does it, what's it called?
When a woman does it, it's called intelligence.
That's the double standard, I think. Or Mars-splaining.
No, but I do have Saturn drishti on both my moon and my rising, so I do have some of that sternness and that fear and anxiety that Malini also touched on. But I think with me, it's mostly it comes off in a very rational way. Like I explain everything to my child to the point where he understands why things work, which most people actually in our world really commend him for, because we live in a very masculine-centric world where air qualities of intellect and intelligence and understanding things, and fire qualities of making things happen, are very venerated. And the qualities of receptivity and caring for yourself and emotionally nurturing are not as venerated in our society. So people see my son being explained how come we're buying this item at the grocery store as opposed to this one, or why he fell and hurt himself. And they're like, oh, what a good mom, but really in my heart, I feel like I'm not being as good of a mom as I could be if I was more, say, just totally unconditionally loving and not explaining to him why it's his fault that he fell. But this is something I deal with. And also that transactional quality does come up for me sometimes. I try to, I expect things from both romantic partners and even with my son. I have that quality of expecting him to pull his weight or expecting him to do things that he's capable of doing in a way that I don't think a Cancer moon would do. So there is some battle there with the Venus and the moon. And I think when Venus is in Cancer, it's what Alix described, which is like this overly nurturing lover who's like constantly momming her kids. When the moon is in Libra, the opposite of that, it's actually like almost too much conditional in the unconditional. There's too much conditional love. There's too much transactional love. And I recognize that new to astrology, really. I don't think I would have understood that about myself if I didn't know that in my chart and be able to sort of, try to make amends with that in whatever ways I can. But it's, you can't just change who you are. You are who you are. And Malini and I were talking about dating, and I said, almost everyone I've ever dated had a Libra moon. And she said, why is that? And I said, it's because I don't like to I don't want to be a mommy to somebody. I want somebody who washes the dishes after I cook dinner or sweeps the floor when the floor is dirty. I like to be with people who give back. And I don't really prefer the quality of overgiving. And I do, though, in my work. I tend to do that more in my jobs. I tend to work service jobs and have no problem cleaning up after people in that world. But in my own life, I like it to be very even. Very that's a big issue I had with my ex-husband, was everything being balanced, everything being fair. And he was a Libra too, so we both had that problem of fairness, wanting it to be fair all the time.
I have it too. And the thing is, somebody's speaker is really loud.
I'll turn it down.
Yeah. Okay. So but that conditional and that transactional nature, it's like always focused on, and you said the word fairness and equality. And again, that with the moon, the way to understand it is that the moon is the part of us that wants to be able to just accept the person and flow in that place of unconditional love. And again, when it's in Libra is about the conditions. It's about the agreement. It's like, well, I can love you unconditionally if you honor this agreement first. It's kind of like shortcutting the point. This is how Venus and the moon works. It's not then it's not conditional, exactly. And with Cancer Venus, it's kind of opposite. It's basically saying, as long as I can nurture you 100%, I'll love you conditionally. But well, wait a minute. That's like, right? So if you've already loved unconditionally, then the the equality is already obliterated. So this is how it's a very important difference between Venus and the moon. Very different. In some ways, there are certain planets that are opposite each other, like Jupiter and Mercury are opposite each other. Mars and Venus are opposite each other, and oppositions really draw out a contrast. One is me, one is you. One is details of the Earth, the other is the big picture, or whatever it might be. But then you get planets like the Moon and Venus. They're almost more confusing than opposite. They're almost like anathema to the other one. They're almost like not just opposites, because opposites have a point of mutuality, a point of mutual interest, right? Like Mars and Venus are always engaged with some other individual, but one is, I'm the important one, the other one is, you're the important one. Jupiter and Mercury always have some common purpose of what's it all mean, in the bigger picture and in the details. But Moon and Venus are almost like, they seem very much like they're the same thing, but they're almost like anathema to the other, like canceling the other one a little bit.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because what just came to me was that the Moon and Venus are the two feminine signs, and they almost are sort of like in this angry combat with each other, which I do want to talk about a little bit more when with the Venus moon.
Yeah, they're functional enemies. This is where these planetary relationships come into play. That's why you learn things like the natural relationship between planets. Sorry to interrupt you, but
No, that's okay. But what I was going to point out was that the masculine planets aren't like that. Mars and the Sun and Jupiter are all very friendly with each other. And there's not that same quality. They sort of help each other. Like in order for the Sun to be really aligned, it has to have solid counsel, and Mars does the orders of the Sun, and there's sort of a more camaraderie working there. Whereas the female planets have this sort of quality that is innately, it's not competitive with each other, but there is a quality where it's very different and it's confused for a lot of women. And I think it's one of the biggest issues we have in our society. I don't know if you guys have anything more, Alex and Malini, you want to say about my transits, but I could start talking about the Venus moon.
Or just this conversation we're having now, because this is a good conversation, and what you just brought up was really good. Yeah.
This is where I really wanted to take it with the Venus moon thing, was that there's a very big difference in our world of how we experience ourselves as women from the Venus lens and from the moon lens. And Sam has already said a lot of very big points that I was going to make about that difference. So I think we've already established those. That Venus is something that's more about this sort of transactional love, and it's also about us being beautiful and pretty in the world. So when we go out into the world in our maiden form, in our not being married, not having children kind of mode, we want to be beautiful. We want to attract from a lustful perspective. We want somebody to respect us and respect our give and take and give back to us what we give to them. We want to have this quality of connectivity that is a little bit on the more superficial end. It has to do with the qualities of Taurus, food, sharing things, art, sensuality, sex, the qualities of Libra, which are also sensual, artistic, beautiful, and sensual. There's more conversation in the Libra end. There's more of an intellectual connection, and in the Taurus end, there's more of the physical, earthy quality. But both of those are a realm that it's still very much about just our physical body and its needs and our mind and its needs. It's not that deeper layer that we engage with people once we become in relationship with them, or once we have very intimate friendships with people. So when we see how someone sort of presents themselves, a female, how they present themselves in the world, a female who feels female in their body and is aligned with that identity, there's a high quality of needing to show the Venus, show how sensual I am, show how beautiful I am, show how easy I am to get along with, show how how friendly and harmonious I am, and how I make everything be very connective and happy and beautiful and nice.
We fall for it.
And I think for men, they go for that. That's like their initial attraction to women is that Venus quality. And I think also it's what a lot of women compare each other on. And it's a lot of what we look at and feel negative about ourselves. We're not, because every image out there, shows you all the different ways you could be that you're not. My hair will never be straight. We'll have different body types. We're not going to be able to fix whatever we think is wrong with us. And so when we go through the Venus transits, we can even see how that shows up. But the moon, on the other hand, has this quality of deep connection. And when we actually get married and when we actually connect with another person, we're really connecting with their moon. We don't care if our wife, I'm not a man, but I know, because I've been married and I've been in deep relationships, they don't care if your hair is done in the morning or if you're wearing the right shade of lipstick or whatever. The connection you have is real. And you talk about very real things, and everything falls more in that moon realm. But we have a disconnect for many of us as women about what part of us is being appreciated or valued. And we often think that it's only the Venus qualities that, and I think that is a bit of a societal thing. It's shown to us through magazines, through movies, through what's reflected back to us as the Venus stuff. We don't see as much of the moon emotional stuff. And both planets, move with some speed. Both Venus and moon also move around the sky with some speed, but the moon really does, right? Our moon is constantly up and down. And people like Alexandra, who have a moon rising, who have a Cancer rising, it's like her person is constantly going through the flux of the entire of the entire sky and all the different signs, and also going through this waxing and waning, right, where it's growing with optimism and hope and what we can build, and then waning to this more neutral mind where everything feels more disconnected and less social and less engaged in the world. So that quality of us that is often the one that's not as shown or not as appreciated in our world is the more important quality of the feminine in many ways. It's our deeper quality, and it's important for men and women. It's not, as Malini pointed out at the beginning of this thing, this isn't about just women and women signs and planets. It's also about the masculine and feminine within each of us. And as women, because we live in a world that does kind of repress moon qualities and repress boundless connection and unconditional love and things like that, we don't live in a world that really venerates any of those things at all. It's harder to tap into. And when we say become a mother, it's even harder to access that parts of ourselves because we were raised in a world where we feel really equal. We feel like everything's supposed to be this sort of transactional, equal way. And all of a sudden we're thrust into a situation where there's no equality. You're going to get up every day. You're going to, clean over 10,000 diapers by the time your kid is 6 months old. And you're going to be constantly nurturing with probably your own body, but maybe, some other form of that. That switch that many people in other cultures and in old ways often honored through ceremony and through years and years of showing the younger women what it would be like when they matured and how they would come into that role from Venus to Moon. That is not really a part of our world as much. So we have to sort of navigate that for ourselves. And it's hard in our culture, especially in America, because it's a lot of going out to find the information. It's a lot of using research or questioning these things. It's less about the connection between people just sharing their knowledge from many lineages. Grandma sharing with mom, sharing with daughter, sharing with the aunties and the nieces, and everyone coming into play and learning. We have more of a situation where people are more alone and separated and have to learn on their own. And as you can see, my moon is a Kamadruma yoga. So I have no planets on either side of it. So I have that feeling sometimes with my moon period, where I feel like it's very much, it feels everything. It doesn't have any planets in front of it. It doesn't have any planets behind it. I don't have anything to sort of buffer that emotional receptivity of what's going on. It just all comes to me. And I don't have a grandmother or a mother or someone passing on the knowledge. It's more of a Wild West, figure it out for yourself kind of a thing. So I think that's one of the biggest issues we have as women in our society, especially when you move that jump from maiden into motherhood, and you do have to really grow up quite a bit and move out of that do I look pretty thing and really move into the can I give every single ounce of my being to another person. And
That's
not
such
really
a great point that you made, just real quick, about how we used to mentor. Also, men were mentored by young boys. Were also mentored about what it was to be a man. Like these were traditions of rites of passage. Now our rites of passage is go to college and get drunk. I don't know. We just don't have them. Mm-hmm. But especially the rites of passage of being the attracting the partner to becoming the child bearer, to rearing children, graduating from the maiden to the queen in the Allison Armstrong code.
Yeah.
Is from such a great point.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that a little bit too. And yes, we do need mentors, and we do need female mentors. But I see it in your chart. You have Venus, Alexis, but it's in a feminine side, but it's in Capricorn, and that relationship of Venus to pleasure, right? And yes, we are not mentored to make that switch between enjoying life and motherhood, but we are, as women, as a feminine energy, even men, shamed for pleasure, shamed for really enjoying sensual pleasures or engaging in the five senses, right? And when once somebody engages with that moon and that motherhood, that side of Venus doesn't die; it's there. And then how do you integrate the two? Uh, is has been a big challenge, especially to a lot of mothers that I talk to. Uh, when they have kids, I have a lot of Indian friends, and it's not. I can't speak about the American culture so much, but in Indian culture, pleasure is not celebrated. So, I have girlfriends who get married, have the kid right away because everybody is pressurizing them. They're on a timeline, right? They get out of college, they find the first man they can. The family looks good. It's not about the guy. Get married, have the kid. There is there's that whole engaging in sensual pleasure with the other person, with that. And there are certain things you can only experience when you are in that relationship, in that masculine feminine dynamic with that other person, and not being able to do that, and then they go through motherhood feeling like it's a punishment for even enjoying sex or even engaging in that act. And many Eastern women go through it. I have a girlfriend who calls it the Muslim guilt, right? But it's not just in
Well, I
Islam,
think
even in Indian cultures and Hinduism, that enjoying that pleasure and engaging in that Venus aspect of beauty and pleasure is not supported. And it's a
well,
very Christian
it's an interesting thing.
role.
Yeah,
So
that's an
the
interesting thing to bring up from the other from the perspective of a culture that sort of doesn't offer women as much of that freedom sexually and sensually. Because I think from the Western perspective, what I see with a lot of mothers is they lose interest in that part because they're not supported by their culture. So if you're not getting help with your child, and I'm speaking really of mothers who have partners, husbands, who maybe have great jobs but are often not home. So they feel like they're single mothers, even though they're being very well supported and they don't have to actually work for money. A lot of times the single mothers I know are actually more like go out and find support because they have to. They don't have a choice. Whereas sometimes mothers who are stay-at-home moms really are drowning the most because they're spending all their time with a kid and they don't have any time to engage in that Venus quality. They don't have time to go get their hair done or their nails done or get a massage. They don't have and they don't feel like making love to their husband because they feel so overworked and tired that when he does come home, they just want him to take the kids, or they just feel checked out and uncared for. So I think you're right. It's very important to continue to nurture that Venus quality as we are mothers. And of course, the first 2 years can be a bit harder in that. You might not get as much of that available. But since we don't really live in a collective society that honors that, we have to find it for ourselves. So we have to find other moms. We have to find women who want to be aunties. Both of you have shown that you want to engage with my child when you're around because you want to learn. The more time you spend with children when you're not a mother, the more that'll be easier for when you are. You want to pay it forward. I think the real truth is that we need more sharing from both ends of that, so that women who are not yet there, who want to be there one day and have a child, can understand what they're getting into. And women who are already mothers can get some respite and some help to actually take care of themselves and actually, nourish that Venus part of them so they still can live in a sensual way. And
Can I add something really quick? I'm sorry, but I think it's really important. I want to just make a very clear statement though about something. Women's sexuality, from the way I see it in this culture, is not celebrated. It's exploited.
Yeah.
It's exploited.
I agree. That's
It's
what
exploited in women's sexuality is an exploit. It's the way women are exploited in many ways, and it's the reinforcement of their value as a sexual being. It's exploited for the pleasure of like men in the form of pornography or industries and advertising, and in every way possible. It's not celebrated in and of itself as like you said, it's shamed. Like, you're a mother and you have sex, or there would be this like kind of as an embodied, quality of life that women should be able to just enjoy as anything else. It's not celebrated, but it's definitely exploited. And again, it's almost worse than not being honored. If it was just ignored, it would maybe be better than what happens now. If it was
Right.
just ignored, then at least it wouldn't be fetishized.
Yeah.
And that's even more of a detriment, because then now, obviously I'm not the woman here, but I would imagine, and what I would think is that it not only it's also what leads to all the body image shame comparison crap as well. Well, I know because I've been with women who've had children, of course, and automatically they feel like, oh, I've had children, so my body isn't what it used to be, and there's all this kind of automatically going in. They can start feeling like, because they've had children or whatever, what it's done to their body is already makes them less attractive and all like that. So I just wanted to put that out there.
I think what I was thinking of is like maybe there's a consciousness that's raising around female sexuality in the Western world and all around the world. In India also, I know people in India who are also embracing that, where there is more call to awaken the sensuality of the feminine, and it's a more conscious awareness. It's not necessarily in any society yet, but it's
that's a bubble, Alexis. That's really a bubble because
right.
We live in a bubble because we have access to certain resources and so that's important. A bubble.
I think it's important to also like allow that to be something that grows. So I agree with you. It is a little bit of a bubble, but it's also something expanding quite a bit. And certainly people who might be watching a Vedic astrology video, there might be more interest in that awakening. But one of the things I find on that side of the people sort of venerating or upholding and celebrating the feminine, which I do see in a lot of the world of people who would pay attention to astrology maybe, is that then a lot of times the masculine ends up being the actual male partner ends up also sort of living in the feminine, and the female ends up having to step even more into her masculine once she has a child.
That's another problem.
On the job and take on all the responsibilities because he's also living in this sort of tantric universe of enjoying life and pleasure and all these different things, and he's not really taking on that male masculine role as much. And she probably a woman who has more masculine qualities in her might choose a partner like that. So the imbalance sort of takes on a different form, if that makes sense. And I bring it up because I really see this with a lot of people I know, like a lot of women I know, not even necessarily in the Vedic or astrology world, or not even necessarily in the super new age world, but I see this with a lot of women, period, where they've stepped more into their masculine. And
so I want to bring a point of rejection here.
One thing I want to do just real quick is, Alex, did you have anything you wanted to add? Because I'm just very aware that you haven't said anything, if you want to.
Sure. Yeah.
Sorry.
I would say that on this topic, the idea of Venus and Moon and these two planets that are feminine planets, and what we're talking about, like the imbalance of these energies, what it brings up to me is really focusing on how to work with them, elevate them, understand them and their differences, and also how they have this combative energy with each other. Where with Venus, it's like, it is the pleasure, it is the sensuality, it's the beauty, it's the enjoyment of life, which is a feminine planet because it's that nature of receiving. It's that nature of also giving, that kind of contractual nature of Venus, but it has that harmonious, beautiful energy that is kind of feminine and giving and about sharing with each other, which is in all of us. It is exploited in the idea of pleasure, or in kind of this superficial, artificial understanding of what Venus energy is. And I think that in what we're discussing and all of these ways of imbalances that we're navigating this, elevating the Venus energy and really understanding what it is so important, so that we can embody it, because it is fine to feel beautiful, but it's not this superficial, artificial beauty. It's something that's within you. And I think that that's a high quality of Venus. And it's not, oh, if you look at me this way, I'm beautiful. If you reject me, I'm not. These are all Venus themes, and different cultures. It plays out in different ways, as Malini is saying in India, or as Alexis is saying in America. And it's like, but I think that what we're talking about is understanding the Venus theme and then becoming aware of how to elevate your energy within it. And the moon too is feminine because it's receptivity, it's emotional experience, it's really reflecting back to us all these things. This is very feminine in nature. The moon really absorbs its surroundings, and it has to do with our mind, our psychology, a lot of our internal dialogue. And I think that even what we're discussing in the mothering energy and how we mother and how we show up in our lives, all of these things, I think just what I would add is what's important to take from all this conversation is how we can really learn about these energies, and that these are the two feminine planets, and the feminine is massively out of balance in this world, and we're seeing the result of it in so many different areas. And so in concentrating on these particular planets and this particular energy, I think the goal is to bring awareness and to really understand how we can elevate beyond this like kind of nonsensical understanding of what these energies are, and go deeper into embodying them so we can have our balance within ourselves, no matter what body person we are. I think that that's really important to also kind of have within everything we're talking about, is how to elevate these energies really for the betterment of everything.
Yeah, because ultimately, like you said, everything that's reflected through our body and mind and externally in the world is going to show up as a dissatisfaction and as an abomination on some level. And at its lowest level, it'll be something that's exploitive and something that we just don't understand. But in the highest sense, again, Venus is the bliss of the soul. We're the source of all of it, and it's the bliss of the soul that's just blissful to be alive and blissful at the beauty of life. And the moon is literally that devotion, that love without any fear of being protected or any kind of irony, where we just accept and feel that divine flow, where there's no action that needs to happen. It's all pure consciousness. So again, yeah, in the highest sense, the source of all of that energy is that bliss is Venus and love is the moon. Bliss and love are the real substratum of the feminine energy.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up the love, because I'm understanding that's what we're, it's the love of the mother. It's the love of that feminine nature, and it's really quite profound. And I think that's even what we're trying to bring back more to our world, is the concept of love. And so I think it's really beautiful that we're even having a discussion about these planets, but they really are what's embodied within them is these qualities of love and bliss, and it's really beautiful. Mm-hmm.
And that's both of you just kind of brought up the exaltation and debilitation points
Right.
of Venus without even really, saying that what Sam's talking about, the high bliss of Venus being exalted in Pisces, is that we really find happiness for no reason, for literally just connecting to source, and we're not trying to get something from another person like we are even when Venus is in Taurus or Libra in its own signs. There's more of a transactional quality. But when we have Venus in Pisces, it's not unconditional love like Cancer, where we're giving and feeling depleted. It's like a love with God and with Goddess that we feel that is so connected that we don't need to get anything specific from the person we're giving something to, because it's all just coming back. It's all just around us, and it's not. It doesn't have to be a tit for tat kind of situation. And that's
the word with Venus is happiness, and we have conditions on happiness. Like the opposite of Pisces is Virgo, where we have a lot of reasons. Exactly. And Pisces is there's no reason to be happy. There is no reason to be happy. Like I said, I always go back to what my guru Amma says, is that yes, we're here to be happy, but happy for no reason. If you're happy, then you're if you're happy for no reason, then you're radiating the source of happiness. Like you see Amma, she doesn't need any reason to be happy. In fact, she could be surrounded by the most unhappy, chaotic, debilitating, horrible situation of waiting to hug thousands of people for the next 12 hours, and she's fine. She's blissful. That would be a nightmare every day, day after day after day, because her bliss is generated from within. She doesn't need anything external to make her happy. In fact, even in the midst of the worst situation, she never leaves that bliss. So Venus is that happiness. The moon is the love. once Shiva and Shakti, once the sun and once the moon starts to reflect the sun, it's love that creates the world.
But
Shiva,
notice that the moon is exalted in Taurus, where everything is sort of grounded and the needs are met. And then the moon can emote because she doesn't have to worry, am I eating? Or my kid's going to eat everything? You know, the moon can have that basic comfort because everything else is grounded and taken care of.
And the thing you said about Taurus earlier, which I just want to reflect real quick, is that the negative quality of Taurus could be the being stuck, or someone might say lazy or something like that. That's when it's overly sensual. But the power of Taurus is the yogic principle of santosha, which is contentment with what you have. When Taurus gets difficult, it's when they want to acquire more and get more because of the material nature, or they just get stuck and they don't want to grow. But santosha, or contentment, is where what you have around you is enough. And we never feel like we have enough. This is why the moon is exalted there. That's why I'm bringing it up in Taurus, where there's enough, and the moon and the emotions can relax because I'm content, I'm full. This is enough. This moment is enough. I can relax. And it's debilitated in Scorpio, where I'm restless. What about this? What about this? What about this? And there's this stress on the mind and on the heart. And when there's that stress, there's not the connection to love. There's not the connection to the depth. It can be, because Scorpio is also a water sign and it's intense, but you have to navigate all of that restlessness.
They have to work for it.
Yeah.
Do you want to go into the Venus transits, Malini?
Yeah.
Or should we do that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So, Venus is, right now it's in Cancer, and it's been since September 1st. So we have already kind of discussed that because Alix has that in her chart, but just to kind of, give a quick thing, it's basically feeling in the romantic relationships or in your transactional relationships. Venus, like Sam said earlier, is where two people have conditions, like needs on the table that need to be met. And both people have to work to have those needs met. When Venus is in Cancer, we have a tendency to overgive and then feel sad about it later because we feel like we're being unconditionally loving, but we actually don't want to be that way, and we want to get something back in return. So we end up feeling sad a lot when Venus is in Cancer. We end up feeling like bereft, like we gave and gave and gave, and then we didn't ever get back. So that can be a quality that maybe Alix might understand on a deeper level, but we could all be experiencing it right now while Venus is in Cancer. And in this moment today, while we're doing this, the moon and Venus are both there. So we're experiencing the moon in her own sign, which might be giving a little more grace as far as that's concerned. But in general, we've been experiencing that transit. And it's going to move into Leo on September 27th. So right before the nodes change signs, which Alix is going to talk about in a minute, we're going to have Venus shift into the fire sign of Leo. And I'm sure you each have something to say about Venus and Leo. My thing that I notice when I do people's charts and they have Venus and Leo is that they tend to have a bit of a showboaty way of expressing themselves. So they like to wear bright colors and loud things, and they like to be very on center stage and expect things in their relationships, generally speaking, that put them up on a pedestal, that make them queen or king. And since we're talking about women more here, it would be more of a female thing where the woman really has, the man on her arm or on her sleeve or whatever they say, like she's carrying around the man on her arm, but she's really the showpiece. And there can be a boldness and certainly a sexuality there, but it's a challenging Venus transit for us because we tend to all want to be center stage when we see it as a transit in the sky. We tend to all have that sort of showboaty quality, and it's harder to make mutuality work because Leo's not where we're really being very, what's the word for, not forgiving, but compromising.
Diplomatic.
We're not being very compromising.
Yeah.
But diplomatic.
Diplomatic, yes. Whatever, yeah.
Okay, so that I don't know if anyone wants to say anything on those two transits because they're pretty much very different, the Venus and Cancer, and we already talked about quite a bit, but Venus and Leo.
Yeah, I think Venus and Leo, what I've seen in charts, especially and during Venus transits, is a sense of entitlement, right? I deserve better. I deserve better than this. I deserve to be treated better than this. I deserve a partner better than this. And that sense of entitlement that comes, like Leo is the throne. I deserve the throne. And, putting
You want to
yourself.
hear something crazy? It's also very affectionate. It's one of those signs.
Yeah.
It's very affectionate. Do you know who has Venus in Leo? Amma. Amma has Mars and Venus in Leo, and she's the queen.
She's the hugging saint.
Notice this too. She's the queen. She's on the stage. I've done arati to Amma before. Amma has people. Amma sits on a stage. She sits there while people kneel before her and wave fire in front of her. So she's also the queen. She is the queen. So Leos are the queen.
She's the
That's
and
the
that's
higher
really
quality, Sam, that you're talking about. Like, and that's the sattvic quality of Leo, which is I love everybody,
Yeah.
all of my
Yeah.
subjects, and
That's
then
why I wanted to bring that part up.
Yeah, and most of us are not there. Most of us are somewhere in the Rajasic or a lower quality where, there's a.
I think also because I have Mars in Leo, I've known quite a few women that have Venus in Leo. And that it's a very affectionate, passionate quality. But yes, the thing we have to watch when Venus in Leo is that sense of entitlement that I deserve. It's just the nature of Venus and fire signs in general. It can be like that. It's that I'm the important one. That's always the thing with fire. I'm the important one, and Venus is the part of us that wants to make sure everything is even. So that part of it gets disrupted. But can be very passionate, very affectionate time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen similar, some women that have a Venus in Leo that almost have similar experience that I do in some respects, because it has that sattvic energy, and they really want to give and love and share, and
Right.
it's still that Venus in a sattvic sign, even though it's Leo, has that quality of trying to navigate conditional love in that place of wanting to give and share. So I've seen that almost more even than wanting to be on the throne is having to navigate that very magnanimous energy of Leo with that Venus transactional energy.
Yeah. It's kind of both, because there's also that romance. Again, Venus it's very romantic. It's like, and Sattvic, it's this kind of romance. I'm going to meet my king is there. I know a few who got to watch the projection if it's a woman who has Venus and Leo, because they'll meet someone, and Leo is a big sign. Big! I just met someone, I met the king, and they can get big. And then, of course, that leads to disappointment. And then that can lead to frustration, because you said you were this and it was this, and now I deserved better. And so everything is a process. We're all saying the same thing, just from a different sort of point of view. And but it's important, like in the culmination, it is literally the queen. I've done arati to the queen of the universe with her Venus, Mars, and Leo, and it's a real thing. It's intimidating. As much as Amma is approachable, hugging, it's something to sit there and do arati, and you're lower and you're waving fire, and she's sitting there like throwing flowers on you, and you're like, I'm in front of the queen. This is a real thing. This is a real activity.
Right. And for Amma, that works really well because she's not trying to be in relationship. But in relationship, it can be a very masculine quality too. It is the most masculine sign in many ways. So there's that constant initiatory quality, which for a man might work really well with Venus and Leo, but for a woman can often be a huge, turn off, or something that emasculates a man, kind of brings him down a little bit.
There's the disappointing quality for sure, no question. Yeah.
Well, the real disappointment comes in the transit when Venus moves into Virgo, October 23rd. That's when we start to find what Alex and Malini brought up a lot in the beginning of this was that quality of disappointment with our Venusness, that quality where we don't think we're pretty enough, where we're questioning our body, we're questioning if we're not perfect enough. Because Virgo is where we want everything to be pure. We want everything to be new. We want everything to be fresh, like a young, fresh virginal girl. And we don't like the fact that we have stretch marks, or that we have fat, or that we have parts of our body that we don't love and that aren't perfect. We look to be beautiful in a very pristine way in Virgo. And so I always find it funny when Venus switches from Leo to Virgo, because I feel like everyone throws off their like feathers and gold lame and starts putting on their like khakis and their button-up shirts and starts looking all demure, like, who, me? I've never had sex before. And there's this quality of non-sexuality there, where it's the pure girl who's never been touched. And it's where we find a lot of dissatisfaction and less happiness, because we're not having any fun. We're more categorizing and putting everything in its place, and we're too busy making everything neat and perfect to enjoy it and to really find the pleasure in it. So that's the reason why Venus is really debilitated in Virgo is because it's not able to expand into that place of happiness, even transactional happiness, but definitely not the happiness of Pisces. It's it's that really detail-oriented, minutia-oriented quality where Venus feels really judged, and we as women feel really judged at that time. Very like this is when we smell bad, or we look bad, or we're not neat enough, or we're not perfect enough, and that's that's a lot of that. Do either of you ladies have anything to comment?
Let's get through the let's do the rest and then go back. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
yeah.
Sure, no problem. Venus in Libra is right after that, and that is obviously Venus in her own sign. So it's a place where we feel very at home in our femininity. We're more into how we harmonize with other people. So we don't have to judge our beauty as much, because the beauty comes in the connectivity. The beauty comes in what we make in the world, what we bring out in the world, and how we engage with others. We get a lot of feedback when Venus is in Libra, which is something that feels good to us, because Venus is where we want that. We want feedback that we're connecting and that we're having mutual pleasure, that we're not just happy ourselves. Which is why what Sam said about Venus in the fire signs can be challenging, because we're then just all about ourselves and we're not being as connected. So when you see Venus in the air signs, you see a lot more connectivity. You see a lot more quality of verbal engagement that's pleasant. Trying to bring out the qualities of pleasant conversation and just niceties and politeness and things like that, which are very important actually, because you can see in our world right now we've really devolved into ugliness and anger and a lot of negative transactional qualities. So Venus in Libra in her own sign will be a very nice change for all of us. And then finally we have Venus in Scorpio, which will be kind of starting right when we have our new moon coming in that, or our eclipse and our new moon happening in Scorpio as well. So there'll be a lot of other planets there already. But Venus in Scorpio, one of the things I really see about that is there's the quality of emotion and that quality of really, connecting in an emotional way with people, but also diving into the shadowy parts and the fear. And a lot of that fear can really drive a controlling aspect. So you do see the tendency for people to start really wanting to control, especially their partners, their romantic partners, being maybe suspicious, thinking people might be cheating on you, or there's this quality of, looking into our own fears and our own shadows really coming up and projecting them on the other person is usually where we start. With Venus in Scorpio, it takes us time to start to look at our own shadows and really do that work. So we often project, we often control, we often can have really a lot of mood swings. It's like the moon is debilitated in Scorpio for all that heavy emotional energy and baggage. Venus can also bring that to relationships a lot, and it can be challenging. There's a fire quality to Scorpio. It's not just a water sign, it's Mars ruled. So there's there's a desire to sort of make things tumultuous, to fight in some way, to make everything come out of the shadows, really wanting to drudge up everything and all the problems and everything you've ever noticed that's wrong, and all your shadow work comes out on the table. And in relationships, that can be very challenging. So
yeah, a lot of provoking. It's a provoking sign.
The Venus transit.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, and we're going to talk about what's next here, Malini, because I can't see down past this.
So Alexis has the new moons up here. I have 3 of them up here. She wanted to talk about the new moons too.
The moon transit.
Feminine energy.
So I'll go through those same thing. I'll just go through them quick. If you guys have something you want to talk about afterwards, we can do that too. But we have what's coming up here is we have our first new moon in Virgo, And then we have our next new moon also in Virgo, and both of them are falling in the very beginning and very end of the sign. So we have one happening September 17th. Sorry, it's a little small for me to see on the screen there, but it's September 17th is our first new moon, and it's going to be happening at 0 degrees Virgo in Uttara Falguni. And so the sun and the moon will be coming together, literally just having come out of Leo. And this is very poignant because the beginning of a sign and the end of a sign is what we call either bala, like an infant state, or mrita, which is like a dead state. And the very beginning of the feminine sign of Virgo, this is going to be a dead state. So it means that our connection to the moon, our connection to our emotional self, is going to be not fully present. It's going to be kind of like, oh, we already did all that, and it's sort of dead to us in that new moon. And the next new moon after that is also going to still be in Virgo, but it's going to be at 29 degrees. So it's going to be at the bala state, the infant state. And we're never really going to be in the meat of Virgo. We're going to be more on either end of it. So that's something to recognize in the cycle. The moon in Virgo has a tendency, maybe Malini could speak to this better than me since she has her moon in Virgo. There's that same quality of sort of categorizing and wanting things to be pure, maybe even some self-effacing qualities where there's a lot of judgment because internally there's this constant desire to sort of categorize and bring everything into its right place, and a real hypersensitivity to that. But when, again, the moon is sort of in this dead or this infant state, we're not as engaged with that energy. It's either so new that we're not really there, we're like a baby just lying there, or it's dead, so there's not quite that level of engagement. And this also sets off Navratri, the new moon that's happening.
And then the next one is Diwali. These two new moons are, one is Navratri, the next one is Diwali.
This one.
Right. So
Yeah.
These are big celebrations, and even maybe Malini wants to talk a little bit more about those because I know it's something she knows a lot about coming from India. But the Navratri is the 9 nights of the Divine Mother, so we're well timed here honoring the Divine Feminine. But Malini, do you want to say anything about either of those two holidays or how they connect?
So for Navratri happens twice a year. The one that we're looking at right now, this one is called Sharad Navratri, that happens in autumn or winter. So to say, and it is really celebrating it's 9 nights leading up to Dashera, and each night is dedicated to a form of the goddess. And if you really pay attention to the forms, it's Parvati, and Parvati is one of those goddesses in India whose maiden, mother, and crone form, all three are celebrated and talked about and expressed. And so during Navratri, the first few nights are celebrating her as a maiden before she met Shiva and her purity. And then, Virgo is also the sign, especially the previous nakshatra, Uttar Falguni, is where Shiva and Parvati got married. And so she was a young maiden when she got married to him. And then when she got married to him, that marriage caused a big shift and change in her, where she matured into this that mother energy. She was called the Annapurna, who feeds everybody. And also, like, her and Shiva's relationship is so celebrated, right? Because he was not only her husband, but her mentor, her teacher, her guru. And she gains all these tantric knowledge and all the yogic knowledge from him. And, she moves from being this young princess in a palace of Himalayas. She was the princess of Himalayas, into this goddess figure, Parvati, that everybody reveres. And then the last few nights of Navratri, before it goes into Dashera.
Can you go up to where the chart is being shown? Because you don't have that chart. Sorry. Just go up to the 17th. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. So that's the chart of Navratri.
Yeah.
When it starts.
And then the last few nights of Navratri is when she really matures uh, into Mahishasuramarthini, or even the Kali energy celebrated there, where you know we celebrate women as mothers and who give birth, which is the first section, almost three-fourths of Navratri, and she's the mother of Ganesha and Kartikeya. But in the last section is where she meets these demons, right? And these demons can be our internal demons, but she meets these demons and she's really challenged. And that challenge really transforms her to be able to even destroy things that do not serve her. So Mahishasuramarthini, Kali, they are celebrated in the last section uh, of those 9 days. And it really is a tale of how that energy, that Shakti, Shiva's wife is Shakti, that energy of Shakti completely transforms from creation to maintaining life to like really the destruction of life in order to create new all over again and transform and evolve. And even with transits, we have to like think of, we'll talk about Rahu and Ketu too, but every time a transit happens or there's a return of the planet to the same position, it's an evolution of that energy. We evolve that energy a little bit more. And so that's the tale that goes on throughout Navratri. It's also the time where Ram, he is the embodiment of sun, the energy of sun, exalted sun. Ram said Ram had exalted sun in his chart. Is fighting Ravana, the demon, which is ignorance. And on Dashara is when he kills Ravana. Ravana has 10 heads. He's extremely intellectual. That's why he said to have 10 heads. He has the intellect of, 10 different scholars in him. But again, that intellect doesn't bring in that purity with it. It brings in arrogance. So on Dashara, he kills Ravana. And then on Diwali, which is this new moon, where sun and moon both are, sun is debilitated and moon is really close to its debilitation.
It's the earlier one. It's the one up. It's the one where it's this
the
one.
October.
Yeah, it's October 16th. That's Diwali.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, that's Diwali. Yeah. So this one is happening there. That's a festival of light.
So sun is pretty close to its debilitation degrees. It's debilitated in the sign of Libra. It's because the sun cannot drain its energy and the energy of the sun gets dispersed. And we celebrate Diwali then because Ram was returning home. The whole tale is of Ram returning home from Lanka after killing Ravana, and there's not enough light for him to find his way back. And Ram is the embodiment of sun, right? So you can think about the sun being debilitated in Libra, where it is not being able to drain its own light. So the people of Ayodhya, for Ram to return back and take his kingdom, light the entire pathway with lamps. And so it's a celebration of light. It's a festival of lights. It's when you can't find light within, you light it. You light the lamp outside to remind you of the light within you. And in India they celebrate it by lighting lamps throughout so that we can find our way back home. In spiritual sense, we can find our way back home to ourselves. So
I want to just make a correction there. I'm sorry, I went along with what was being said because I can't see that clearly, but it is actually, you were right, Malini. It's Navratri actually starts on the 17th of October, so it's actually that first one, and then it's Diwali on the November.
This one, yeah.
Yeah. So that just because the sun and the moon do have to be debilitated there in Libra, and it's kind of weird because all the moons, all these new moons are really on the 29th and the 0 degrees, either 29 degrees or 0 degrees. But I did just look that up just to make sure because I was pretty sure it was actually October for Navratri. So that's, I think, what you originally said, I think was
Diwali is October, and Navratri starts in a few days. Diwali is October 16th.
I don't know. Okay, well, everything I've looked up has said otherwise, but okay.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's supposed
For
to
the
be.
Bali, the sun and the moon both are debilitated. I mean, moon is pretty close to its debilitation degree, and so is the sun. And moon is, you know,
It's close.
Oh,
in
maybe you're right. Maybe you're
I
right.
think it's
Okay.
October. That's actually the start of Navaratri, and then it's actually
Maybe you're right. Maybe Diwali's November. Sorry.
yeah.
They're
So
usually one after the next. Sorry.
well, they are. It's just confusing because again, that part where the new moons are all happening at 29 degrees or 0 degrees, so it's a little bit
Yeah.
confusing.
Yeah,
But
sorry, I was wrong. I think Diwali is going to be on the
it-
in November because of this, and so again,
Yeah.
this is why it's tricky.
And the October one, the one in the 17th, is coming right after the new moon in Chitra. And so thank you, Malini. That was awesome, Share. I wanted you to give that because I knew you could do a lot of justice to it with
and also
your.
the last thing we have to remember for Diwali too is Ram, actually his wife got abducted, and it can be seen in this chart, and he went to get his wife back. And Venus is debilitated. Moon is also close to its debilitation degrees. Moon is debilitated in the first few degrees of Scorpio. So, and Sita is the embodiment of Lakshmi, the female energy, and that gets debilitated. And how, you know, the people light these lamps so that these energies can come back home and come restore them fully. And it can be seen in this chart too.
Yeah, and
on
there's
the
a lot
days when the sun and moon are the weakest, we intentionally bring the light.
and that's a lot. That story with Sita and Ram is shows a lot of things about the female relationship, right, in society, with the fact that she's not believed, that she wasn't touched by Ravana, and she has to prove herself by getting in the fire. And even after she proves herself, they still don't want her to be queen, and she still has to die. So it's a very a lot of those stories bring out the tragedy of society's treatment of women and how women are. And Navaratri is really more about empowerment of the woman, right, where she can turn into this emanation that will just completely kill and annihilate anything that's hurting her children. And then at the very end, she can take that same demon. Durga turns around, takes that same demon she displayed, and breathes it back into her being, because even the ugliest parts of us are still part of her. We're not separate. You know, it's the goddess. I love that about her, right? She says, "Call to me, and I will be there for you, and I'll take even your ugliest parts, and I'll kill it and bring it right back into me and regenerate it." That's such a feminine quality that is really powerful in those stories. So thank you for sharing that, Malini. So the final two new moons are in Libra, but as we just saw, it's kind of at the very end of Libra in Vishaka on 29 degrees. And then the big total solar eclipse, which is happening, is also a new moon, and that's going to be December 14th, and that will be at 29 degrees Scorpio. So we don't really have a connection with our moon these next few months in that way where we're really engaged with it. There's a quality of either, you know, in the beginning of a feminine sign, it's Rita, it's dead, and at the end of a feminine sign, it's Bala, and it's reversed for the masculine sign. So for a Libra, at the end of Libra, it's going to be that dead quality in Vishaka because it's a masculine sign, and that's a really important thing for us to understand about our emotional connection to ourselves, to our intimate partners, to our friends, and anyone that we have that kind of emotional connection with, and also just our own self, you know, to realize that we could be a little bit less engaged than maybe normally when the moon goes through these different cycles. The moon in Libra we've already discussed in depth too, because I have that in my chart, and the moon in Scorpio I think we kind of touched on being debilitated and really where we find a lot of emotional upheaval. But of course, at that point, the South Node will be right joined the Sun and Moon in that.
Malini, can you scroll down so we can see the last full moon or the last new moon? Yeah.
I don't know if she has that one up. Does she?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
We didn't.
Yeah, we don't have that one up, but
Oh,
it's going to
that's
be
fine.
the
Oh, okay.
14th, and it is also sort of the segue into Alex talking about
That's
Rahu
fine.
Ketu.
Okay.
Ketu is going to be on the moon and sun in that new moon, and we're going to see a lot of detachment from our emotional state there. That I think is important to realize. I don't know if anyone else knows this. I happen to because I gave birth just a few days after. But when Donald Trump was elected president in 2016, we had K2 red on the moon. And there's definitely a quality of not being aware of what's going on, being surprised because we're so disconnected from our emotions. So I think maybe Alex can step in and go into the transit of Rahu and Taurus, K2 and Scorpio, unless we have anything else to discuss.
Yeah, I can start there, and Carl will kind of segue us there. And the reason why we thought that talking about Rahu and K2's transit was so important is because they're transiting out of Sagittarius and Gemini, which are masculine signs, and they're moving into Scorpio and Taurus, which are feminine signs. And so this again is talking about the nature of the feminine, and Rahu and Ketu are really polarizing energies that have a lot to do with our karma as a person and as a society, and we're really navigating these very polarized energies. And so when we pay attention to where they're shifting, they're bringing back this feminine energy and helping us to again work with coming into balance with these polar energies. And so we thought going a little bit into kind of Rahu and Taurus and K2 and Scorpio and what that means. And I'll start us off, and I know that Alexis and Malini both have things to share about this as well. But one thing I thought that was very interesting is that there's the qualities of the feminine that play out within these two signs. It's like we have a Earth, Venus, the feminine nature of Venus in an Earth sign of Taurus, and then the feminine nature of Mars in a water sign. And how it feels like to me is that Scorpio is kind of that darker feminine, and not necessarily like dark as in bad, just the deeper, the shadow realms, the way that the feminine really can go very deep into the emotional body, and how that can bring up, a lot of courage and strength as in the feminine nature that we hold, or it can bring up a lot of the intensity, those darker, vulnerable areas that we kind of don't want to go. I think a lot of times we kind of, that Scorpio energy, we kind of push it aside. Don't really want to look at the vulnerable side of things, but then that feminine nature that can dive really deep into the unknown and go into the intensity with courage, that's a very feminine nature of Mars quality, to have that nature. I think that's a strong feminine that sometimes we just kind of are scared of. Don't go there. So it brings up a lot of insecurities and control and all sorts of things as a result. And I think a lot of women, that even if they have a lot of Scorpio energy, very intense, can be hard to really not be accepted or held in that depth. And then the Taurus energy is a little bit that feminine quality of Venus, a little bit more even, I would say, socially acceptable. It has sort of that youthful, joyful pleasure quality where we're really working with more of the Venus quality, the feminine earth, and also just working with the earth. Scorpio is like the deep water, and Taurus is more the earth and the plants and all these things. And so with the nodes coming here, I think they're bringing that into, obviously they're bringing that into kind of our perception, they're bringing it into our awareness, and trying to, I think, balance out these polarities. Where K2 and Scorpio could really be bringing a lot of hidden things to the surface in terms of our insecurities, in terms of our vulnerabilities. And this can be very healing for the feminine collective, not just for women, but this energy of really dealing with, scrutinizing, going into, K2 is the moksha karaka. It's a planet that wants truth. And if it's not truth, it wants to pierce beyond the smoky mirror. And Scorpio can have a lot of smoky mirrors because it has a lot of vulnerability and a lot of tenderness and control and all these things that we've talked about. And so I think K2 going into that can be a very powerful healing if we go there with it. I'm sure everyone else will share kind of other aspects that can come up as well. And then the Rahu going into Taurus is really accentuating that earth element, that beauty, that pleasure, that desire for stability and safety and comfort. One of the things with Rahu going into Taurus that I think about is also what we've been discussing is the realness of beauty, like not the superficiality or getting comfortable in artificial beauty. But really going beyond that to see the beauty of the earth and how the earth is just beautiful in its essence, no matter where it's at. We don't judge the earth as being ugly or something like that. It just is. And that's sort of the same with the body. And with the senses is just perceiving and enjoying and really being in an elevated sense of comfort with things as they are and wanting that stability and really going into that kind of nature. And then with K2 and Scorpio, also with that going deeper into truth, allowing kind of the insecurities, those kind of things to be transmuted, going deeper and embracing that feminine nature that we have. And so I think that there's a lot that can come into balance here, especially since the nodes are going to be exalted, kind of bringing us into a really potent time with those qualities. And I'm curious to see. I know Malini was really had a lot to say about this too, so I wanted to also see what you had to say, Malini.
Thank you, Alex. I actually really agree with you on a lot. Because Taurus is that sign where you know.
Looks like sorry. It looks like Alexis is having a little bit of issues being connected. So anyway.
Should we just wait for her?
No. We can keep going. I was just saying that's why the screen's a little different. So go ahead.
Okay. So Taurus is the place where we are looking for stability and structure, and then Scorpio is that side of us that feels very vulnerable, and it's where all our insecurities come up, and all our issues with safety and security comes up, right? But we also have to remember that Rahu and Ketu are shadow planets, and Rahu especially is the rebel. My ruling planet is joined Rahu, so that rebellious nature, right? And like you said, Alex, it's redefining beauty, but it's also like doing that Ketu end of the war. Generally, wherever Ketu is, that's like you said, we tend to not look at that side, but in Scorpio, Ketu is very powerful, so it gives us that power or that strength to go deep into our own traumas, because you can only be a rebel and change when you're connected to things that have not worked, to things that feel traumatic. And yes, Ketu in Scorpio is ruled by Mars, so in the Navrasas and the 9 emotions, where we talked about the darker energies, which is dealing with anger, disgust. Ketu is the disgust in us, right? We have to be truly disgusted by a system to first change it. Anger, sorrow, fear, shame, taking all of that, not just negating it, taking all of that and then letting it transform. The other thing that I really wanted to bring out is the previous time the nodes were in feminine signs, which was where Rahu was in Cancer and Ketu was in Capricorn. The whole Me Too movement happened. And now Rahu going in Taurus and Ketu going in Scorpio. I like this a little bit better, because even though I do expect a lot of feminine issues coming up, when Rahu was in Cancer, in India, a lot of rape stories came up, and women getting brutally raped, and there's no justice happening, and it was like it was an extremely hard time, even being an Indian woman, to witness that and just not feeling safe in India. And then stuff with sexuality and rape coming up here too, and the whole Me Too movement. And I think the Rahu in Taurus and Ketu in Scorpio, that axis, will let these things come up, but then again, find new ways, new structures that didn't exist. Rahu is going beyond what already exists, going beyond what even we can imagine, and bringing that into existence, into this material realm, so we can create a healthy way of the feminine evolution. And I think that will be that might be pretty big. I do expect a lot of scandals to come up collectively with Ketu in Scorpio, especially with in the political system, scandals relating to affairs and sex, and this is all over the world, not just in the US. And then Rahu trying to figure out how do we create a new system that works for everybody? How do we create this thing that is sustainable? Because sustainability is a big thing about Taurus, but whatever we have done is not sustainable. So Rahu gives that intelligence, or not even intelligence, that drive to think something beyond what is already existing. Especially in terms of, I'm specifically talking about women and women's issues and everything we talked about up until now, whether it's beauty, it's pleasure, it's motherhood, it's women's sexuality, all of that. How do we do it in a new way? And the Ketu end giving us that intelligence to not just look away, but really go deep within and take each issue, no matter how uncomfortable it feels, bringing all of that up, and then Rahu end of the node transforming it.
One of the things I wanted to say, that's great. So I love what you said, Alex, and you also, Malini. The two things that I wanted to bring up about the qualities of feminine energy that I think are going to be really good, that'll be very supportive, and really specifically what Taurus and Scorpio are as far as feminine virtues and feminine power is, Taurus is that quality, I'll just say of women, but of the feminine, but embodied most easily by women, to make an environment beautiful and comfortable and happy, and where there's stability and consistency and value, and bring value. You see how easily women just bring value to things. They make an environment more beautiful and happier, and the people feel more valued automatically, and that's just that virtue of the feminine, especially with other people. Whereas masculine can be more somewhere else. Women generally are more naturally are more focused on people and bringing value to that, and bringing an environment that is more valuable in the sense of just the space itself. Like the home is more comfortable, the people are happier, and there's that natural, beauty and joy of life that comes. Alex is going back and forth here, so I'm just going to leave it. And so Rahu going through Taurus is just going to be that quality of feminine energy that just adds value to life, to everyone, and that's going to be something that becomes more valuable to us all. And I said this in an overall sense, in a cultural sense, that we're getting out of this Gemini like conspiratorial thinking, like here's what it all means, stuff that we've been going through, to something that's going to align us around mutual values and more connected, not around what divides us politically or intellectually, but what unites us. The shared common values that we all have, that's on a cultural level. But on a personal level, I think for women in general, it's going to be great, because that virtue that they naturally bring, which is to make others more valued, bring more value into things, is going to be more appreciated. If that makes sense. With the Rahu and Taurus, because we're going to want to feel more connected. We're going to want to feel more solid. We're going to want to feel more happy in our homes and in home environments and whatnot. And that's what Taurus does naturally. So that will hopefully be will show more value to women. As far as the Ketu and Scorpio part, Scorpio to me is the part of women or feminine energy that it's this hidden courage, this emotional courage that is hidden, that is deep, that in many ways women don't even know they have until they have something to sacrifice for. Like once a woman loves you, or a woman loves her children, or whatever it is, they'll hang in there no matter what, through thick and thin. They're not going to give up just because it gets hard. They're courageous. They're like, yeah, you thought I was just this little friendly, happy woman. Let's see you do something to my child, and you'll see how much balls I have, how much courage I have, how much I will never give up on the things that I love, so to speak. And that's what Scorpio is. It's that fixed water. That water that is solid, that's unshakable. It's that those emotions that are solid and unshakable, that don't change. And so again, K2 there is going to be really powerful to have us really plumb the depths of that power. And again, the nodes are powerful here. These aren't this isn't just another transit. Rahu is said to be exalted here, and so is K2. I particularly like K2 here. I'm going to keep hanging with you, Alex. I'm sorry, Alexis. I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up on you. I'm not giving up on you.
I put it on my phone to make it easier.
It's like K2 and Scorpio. I'm not giving up on you. You keep popping. I'm hanging there. So.
Hey, we all saw my chart.
but the K2 in Scorpio I particularly like as an exalted placement, because Scorpio is that place where we need to bring a lot of focus. When we stay on the surface of Scorpio, that's when it's really it can be damaging, particularly to those feminine planets, because then we're just floating about on our desires and our triggers and our conspiracies. On the surface of Scorpio is not a good place to be. It's frustration, but the depth of Scorpio, that's where we all need to get to. We need to go deeper than all that triggering with Scorpio energy in general. And K2 is so powerful because K2 is all about focus. It's like a drill bit. That's what K2 is. That's why the masculine planets do better there, because the masculine planets are ready to fight through something difficult. And so this is why K2 in Scorpio is so powerful. I kind of like it a little more than Rahu in Taurus, but I'll take it. I'll take the stability of Rahu in Taurus now, because we need stability, because everything is so unstable. So these feminine virtues are going to be really supported with this powerful transit of Rahu through Taurus and K2 in Scorpio. That's what I would add.
Well, I apologize for my in and out computing, but I did catch most of what you said. I got to be backstage for a lot of it, so I was able to hear that. But I think one thing I'd like to add to the Taurus, the Rahu Taurus part, when Malini was talking earlier about how it's a time for change, or a time to implement new ways of doing things. I think one of the challenges we have with Taurus is getting stuck in the way that already is. It's hard to move out of it. And that erratic quality of Rahu, where we keep trying something new, but we're sort of immature with it. We don't really know what we're doing. That's going to be an interesting thing to see, because in the history, like Sam showed in a recent video, or a couple recent videos he did, there's a lot of complacency that occurs in this alignment. There's a lot of a desire to get along that sort of supersedes our awareness about, we're moving out of the looking for truth and moving into how can we get along. And for the most part, on our daily lives and with each other, that's a very big positive. We won't be fighting with each other as much on the internet. But I think with as far as making something new happen, it's an interesting way to get the Taurus up and moving and doing something, to get that part of us to do something. The other thing I really wanted to touch on that I think Alex talked about was the quality of the feminine that's really sort of shunned is the Scorpio side of it, the part where we're emotional and angry, and it really shows the unintegrated Mars aspect. I believe Malini talked about at the very, very beginning of this, how women are really more integrated with their Venus qualities, because that's what we are. We're in this world as women, and we're supposed to get along with people, and we're supposed to be agreeable, and we're supposed to make things nice, and we're supposed to connect. And that Mars quality is something that we sort of repress, and we don't have as good of a handle on it. If we get in an argument or a fight with another woman, we usually don't hash it out quite the same way we do. We just make it better at a later date, depending on our personal Mars relationship. I think that the Scorpio, Mars, the emotional part of Mars, is really where where women are sort of disliked by men in many ways, or disliked by even society in many ways, because we can be very irrational and very angry, and have it come out in that super emotional way. So if we are more aware of our anger and more aware of how to collectively, not just women, but definitely as women, use this time with K2 and Scorpio to really tap into what angers us, and justifiably so when we are angry in many ways, as we've discussed throughout this thing. But to integrate the quality where we're able to actually have words with somebody and say what we believe and we think in a way where we can also hear what they think, and it doesn't negate our experience. If we can work on those kind of communications and those kind of fights, if you will, I think that will do worlds for both ourselves personally and also just for the world at large. And not just, but I think about a lot that women just have.
It's getting hard to hear you, Alexis. You're breaking up quite a bit. So I think we got most of what you said there, but it's getting kind of hard to hear you. Your phone is breaking up and stuff. So.
Okay.
So Alex, did you want to finish? Because I want to make sure that you also have your that you get to wrap this one up, as well, because.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's. I really appreciate what everyone shared, and I think it's just. It's a really powerful balancing of both embodying the energy of that, like you shared, Sam, of that kind of feminine nature that women have, where they really do bring a certain flow, an accommodation, and they really do add a lot to things, and that is that Taurus nature that's respected and also more accepted, and really for the beauty that it brings. And so embodying that more, as long as, like I said, we're working from a higher energy with it, where we're not acting on a superficial level, or we're finding comfort in things that are actually harmful for us, but we're actually utilizing that energy to really bring comfort and stability and structure to our lives, and all embodying that feminine nature of really listening to our senses and embodying pleasure, accommodating beauty, all these things, working more with the earth, all these things that Rahu Taurus can bring, while also harmonizing the other end of allowing the repression to come out and allowing for ourselves to not be on that surface of Scorpio that is just triggered and impulsive. It's like we can go deeper and really allow for the vulnerabilities to move and to accept that part of ourselves as well, so that we can have a balance with these energies that are working, and kind of find peace there, so that we can really be integrated in those feminine qualities of both Mars and Venus, which, as Alexis was saying, is so important, that women are working and harmonizing their Mars energy to really kind of heal that nature. And then men too, because Mars is so important in that quality of integrity and discipline, and being able to have strength that is non-reactive. So I think that this really is very powerful if we tune into it, in our ability to kind of navigate these two ends of the spectrum and find reconciliation there within ourselves first.
Yeah, the ultimate thing to remember about the planets, like with Venus, is that happiness for no reason. Again, and this is why it's so easily embodied in Taurus, because, again, and the thing we all have to remember is, whether we have planets there or not, or whatever, we're all a culmination of all the planets, all the signs. I don't have any planets in Taurus, but like, I can be totally at peace in a certain environment and moment where the things are around me, and I have what I want, I have what I need, I have my nice drink, I have my whatever it is I'm doing, and I'm content with that. I'm content with where I'm at. And again, we usually find some sort of contentment from something external. The highest quality of that is not something external like our environment or whatever. It's because then ultimately, maybe I'm content in this moment, but then there's the next moment and there's something else. The true contentment, and santosha as a yogic principle, is an inner contentment, where the desire and longing for something external just stops, and you realize that's not where it's going to be. It doesn't mean you don't live externally. It means that you find peace and contentment within your heart. And again, it's an inner concept. It's an inner contentment. And this is why Rahu and Taurus can be and needs to be a very deep meditative transit. And again, we have K2 opposite that in Scorpio. So again, the nodes are always a dynamic. Rahu in Taurus is trying to be stable, and Ketu in Scorpio is trying to dig down into the source of the instability. And so this is why I say I really love the Ketu in Taurus, the Ketu in Scorpio part of it as much or more, because the Rahu in Taurus can calm down once the Ketu in Scorpio penetrates to that source of instability, penetrates to that source of unease, or you might even say dis-ease, which is an emotional dis-ease that we have. Scorpio is that sign of emotional restlessness that leads to frustration and the loss of control more than anything. Scorpio is where we realize we don't have any control, and we're trying to get some kind of control. And if it stays on the surface, then Taurus tries to assert some kind of external stability, when underneath it all there's this kind of volcano of uncertainty going on. So this transit can be very powerful. And again, in the highest sense, it's these feminine virtues, that emotional depth of Scorpio, and the ability, when there's that emotional depth and stillness, to create this stable, beautiful world that we all live in. And that's the world is a very Taurus thing. As much as we like to think it's chaotic or whatever, it's not. It's very stable. Everything is very stable and beautiful, and nature is an embodiment of Taurus energy. You go out in nature and it's like everything, all the elements in harmony and beautiful. So on a personal level, what that can do is an appreciation of that can make us relax and just go, whew, you know, it's okay. It's all right. Malini, do you have anything else to add?
No, you said it all now. Yeah,
We're going to try Alix again. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. You
Try
said
Alexis.
it all. It is that courage to go deep, and that, really engaging with that Ketu end of that node to stabilize the Rahu end. I think that's a big need, especially as we're talking about women's issues, in me being a feminine embodied being on this planet. How do I, and for me that's happening in my second house, so going deep within my own insecurities, right? Second house has to also do with same insecurities, so going deep within my own insecurity, as it, on a personal level, as it has to do with my body, as it has to do with how I appear to the world, but also like as I'm valued as being a female, the gender female body on this planet, like trying to dig deep into those insecurities will help stabilize that Rahu end of the node, which is coming from that place of having dealt with all the traumas, all the repression. How do I create a life that is beautiful and sustainable and stable, and where I can enjoy and all of that.
Great. Well, everyone, that's been great. I hope everyone has enjoyed doing this. I think it's been a lot of fun, and I think we really got into some very important issues. We'll adjourn again at some point and talk about other things. And of course, I'm going to make sure to have everybody's websites and contact info in the video and whatnot. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you.
Thank you.